Chamber tour. I'm Robin Shai with the Addison County Economic Development Corporation,
And I'm Sue Hoxie with the Chamber of Commerce.
so we're really glad that you came today, and we thank Betsy Bishop and Ashley who are going to take it from here and talk about workforce and explain about how this is going to be used for initiatives and things going forward. So, and coffee is ready for those who've been hovering.
So this is going to be a wide-ranging discussion, so feel free to get up and get coffee at any time. It's morning. We all need that through life. And once upon a time, I used to work for a governor who lives in Middlebury, and he couldn't actually go more than, I don't know, a half an hour without a cup of coffee. So please feel free to follow him to the coffee area at any time. So, as Sue and Robin said, first of all, thank you for having us here, and thank you for coming out on this early morning to talk about workforce participation. Really what we're trying to do is gather ideas today on how to address our workforce supply gap that we have. One of the things that we're going to try to do today is this is a big brainstorming session. So a lot of today's conversation is going to end up with you giving us ideas. And our goal is to gather a bunch of ideas to really synthesize the whole project. And hi, come on in and welcome. And if you want to continue to do this, that's great. Let's come in. And what we're trying to do is gather ideas about the workforce participation. So we're going to start this morning with a couple of slides about the data around the workforce. These are slides that we have obtained from the Vermont Futures Project, which is a project really working on creating a robust economy and a plan for a robust economy by 2040. I'm not sure if you've heard about that or not, but I see Steve Terry just walked in. Welcome. And Steve is a board member, a Middlebury resident, and board member of the Vermont Futures Project. So we are using their data today. And one of the things that, Ashley, where are these? Maybe you guys could pass these out. So one of the things that the Futures Project has identified is something that we call a workforce supply gap. And Ashley's going to hand these cards around so that you can actually see them. But the Futures Project has looked at all of the data and saw that we have about 3,500 high school graduates every year going right into the workforce. And then we have about 4,500 college graduates going right into the workforce. Giving the supply, the workforce supply in the state is roughly around 8,000. But then we started to look at the need that employers have. And the need is well above that, closing in on 19,000, leaving us with almost 11,000 person gap. So this gap is expressed on this side of the card that you all should have right now. And the details are here about what percentage retirements, what percentage for economic growth, those types of things. But basically what the Futures Project has said is we need this many more people in Vermont between the ages of 25 and 64 to fuel our economy at roughly a 1.5% to 2% growth rate. For any of you who are economic students, you'll know that that's not the definition of a booming economy. That's about what we have now, so it's to sustain what we have. So today's exercise is for you to help us figure out how do we close this gap. This is, in theory, 10,000 more workers a year. Not 10,000 total, but the goal is by 2040 for us to be filling this gap. That means that next year, we're not saying, let's find something to do that's going to bring 10,000 people to our borders tomorrow. That's not the exercise. The exercise is what can Vermont do, what can we put in place as individuals, as businesses, as municipalities, as state government, that we can do to attract more people to Vermont in that workforce population that will drive our economic growth. So that's what we're going to do today. Ashley, did you want to go through the slides just to get them situated on some of the statistics and data that you will need for this?
Certainly. So the yellow line represents Vermont and the blue line is the United States. These are our current workforce participation rates. Vermont was trending along the national level for quite some time, but in the later years, while the national level has started to level off, Vermont while we're having fewer workers in the workforce, we're not having fewer jobs. There's still the same number of jobs, and it's actually inhibiting our ability to grow, because if we can't fill the current jobs, we can't create new jobs. So we're trying to figure out the solution to this. Again, it seems that because we have the second oldest state in the nation, we have a lot of people that are moving out of the workforce. We have kids that are deciding to go to college rather than move into the workforce. And the individuals that we actually have that are coming to this state are not moving into our workforce. So that's why we're continuing to see the decline. This next graph represents the percent of our population that is actually in the workforce. And our population is right around 625,000 currently, and we're right around 345,000 in our workforce. So it's just above 50%, which is kind of scary. Again, this is the biggest dilemma that our employers are facing. They're struggling to find workers, and if they can't fill the job that's been open for months, they're going to come up with alternatives, whether that be find a way to remove that job altogether and perform your business without that job, or moving out of state where you can find workers, or it's replacing us with technology. I mean, we're seeing it in Flippy, the robotic Flippy hamburger. We've got our kiosks that we go through at the checkout lanes in our grocery store. So it's the reality that employers are trying to find alternatives to replace the lack of workers. And so that's going to inhibit us further down the road when we're replaced with technology. This is a graph representing our drivers of population change. The yellow line represents our natural increase, which is our births and deaths netted out. The really scary thing is that we had an economist speak at our Government Affairs Committee meeting, and he said we are at the point where we have more deaths in the state than we do births, which is very scary. We have the lowest birth rate in the country right now. And we also don't have people moving into the state. We're lacking the drive of people net in migration. So not only are we not naturally growing, we're not drawing people into the state to help us grow. So that's what we're here to solve today. We're looking for solutions to change these numbers, because really these should be reversed. The point where we cross this line is when we started going downhill. We need to start reversing this trend, because it's not something that's going to happen in the future. It's something that's currently occurring. So thank you all for being here and being interested in coming up with a solution. We appreciate it.
So this is just some of the data. You can see it's not our data. It's from the U.S. Census Bureau. And this is something that what we'd like to do is try to figure out how to get that red line, leveling off, maybe slowly ticking up, and that yellow line to right now, just at the tail end, you're starting to see that just start to decline again. We're hopeful that we can talk about leveling off. We don't anticipate anything that we're going to do to see those two lines go climbing up like that. That's not the point. We're trying to figure out how to slowly, over time, increase the workforce population in Vermont at a rate that businesses can absorb for economic growth over time. So that's why this concept is a very long-term concept. It's not something, we're not looking for solutions today that are going to have massive amounts of people to come here overnight, but over time. So before we get to the brainstorming part, we're going to do one last thing. When you came in, we asked all of you why Vermont. And we did this the first time we did this exercise. We did it at the Vermont Chamber's Business Expo in May. We have thousands of people that come to that. And we were at a business event where the majority of the people there were business people. And we just wrote this blank wall and said, right on the wall, why Vermont? And we had thought we were going to get lots of answers about, I love my job, or even, I hate my job, or my business is growing, or it's not growing, or I invented something, or we thought it was going to be something about business. We could not have been more wrong. What we found out in that was much of what I actually see here. So we don't give you a lot of direction when we ask you to answer why Vermont. We just ask you why Vermont. Most people sort of hear, and every place we've asked interprets that as, why am I here and why do I stay, right? So we've rearranged your sticky notes to sort of, we see these going into some buckets, and I'm just going to give you some ideas of why you all are here. So I'm at that age where I do the thing with the glasses on and off, right? So I'm doing it backwards apparently though. So this area right here is all about community. Sense of community, deep abiding sense of community, to be a part of community. It's my home. This is slightly different. It's my home. And then there's, we need more people to work and stay. Oh, whoever wrote that's already on theme today, so thank you. Vermont is home. So this is sort of that sense of community. This particular area here is about people, okay? Nice people, it's near nature, creative people, because of the people, it's people, the commitment to people. So you might even be able to say that sort of sense of community as well. But really, you hear what people are saying is, it's the people I live and work with. That's why I'm here, that's why I stay. Over here, we sort of have a little bit more of a quality of life thing going on here. Beautiful little traffic, place to raise kids, outdoor recreation, clean and safe, quality of life, great place for kids to grow up, connected to the community. Vermont, because we care about clean air, civic participation in our family. Oh, clean air, the environment, civic participation in our family. Sorry, I had to read somebody's writing there. Why not? It's a beautiful place to live, family, opportunities, good friends, family. So this is more about quality of life. This is about family. And then we have a couple of random ones that don't really fit into a bucket, and these are the ones I find to be the most fun. So we're different, like California of the East Coast. There you go. Okay. It's last outpost, clean, free, and beautiful. Vermont is what America was. Vermont, because the best place to start is where you are. And then this one, this little lonely one down here in the corner, this is the only one that actually says anything about jobs in the economy. One. Okay. One. And it says, my husband got a job with awesome union benefits. Okay? So that is really very interesting when you start to think now about, back to your graphic there, I'm going to steal yours for a minute, the graphic with the workforce gap. This is a supply gap. We know this to be true. Maybe we're off by 1,000 or so, but let's not quibble over those particular numbers. The employers of the state are saying, I need more people to come to work. We have a 3% unemployment rate. I need more people who are willing to work day in and day out, report to work on time, every single day, 40 hours a week, every shift, so that I can get my product out, my service out, whatever it is. And they're not finding it. We have jobs that are not being filled in this state. If you need proof of that, see me afterwards. I have plenty of that. We do have some people who are unemployed in this state that we always wonder, why can't those people get those jobs? There's a skills gap there. So when we're talking about how do we get more people to Vermont, the question, the things I want you to keep in mind is why you are all here, why you came to Vermont, and why you stay. It's generally about the community, the people, the environment, the quality of life. And occasionally, it's because of jobs in the economy. So it's to us, it was really stark when we did this in May. And we have decided to do this all around the state. And we have done this in 4 places now, 2 different Burlington locations. We did it in the Valley last week, today here, and tomorrow?
Okemo.
Tomorrow we're going to Okemo in Windsor County. So we're going all around the state. And what we intend to do at the end is, if you want to stay connected and understand this exercise and our findings in the rest of the state, you can leave us your card or sign up for just leave your email here. We will send you a summary of this event whenever Ashley gets back to the office. It won't be tomorrow because we're going to Okemo, but probably by the end of the week you'll get a summary of this event. And then we're handing all of this data that we find over to the Vermont Futures Project. And what we're asking of the Vermont Futures Project is, as they begin to solve this, here are ideas from every community in Vermont. And they are posting all of these summaries on the Vermont Futures Project webpage so that you can see them grow. I think there's 3 up there now. There's four up there now, and by the end of the week there'll be 2 more. And then what you'll see is them by region of the state. And then we're going to try to summarize all of that data. So all of your answers around community, quality of life will be synthesized with everybody's else. So if you're interested in that, you're welcome to either follow it on the website or sign up and we'll send it right to you. Yes?
So at the other events that you posted, do you have different age demographic than what's sitting in this room?
You know, that's a really good point. We didn't do demographic data. But I think if you look at for each thing, I'm not sure if we could. Well, I'm not sure we can go back and do that. It was interesting. One of the ones that we did for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and it was all basically municipal employees, so a lot of town managers, community planners, folks like that. When we did this exercise with them, it was like 3/4 community. And then and I was like, wow, look at that. And then it dawned on me the audience. So I do think demographics are important, and I'm sure you're talking about age.
Yeah, well, I'm curious if you were to do, like, post this at high schools or post it and ask this of the people who we want to have stay here.
Right.
Instead of us who are aging out. I'm just.
Well, it is interesting, but this is a representative sample of Vermont, right? And
it is, but we're here to stay. And
so we're working with the YPs around the state, the young professional groups as well. So it's a good idea that maybe we can do this with some of the YP groups. So, and I know the Futures Project is very connected with the YPs. So it's asking them exactly like what would keep you here, or college students.
Well,
right?
I think they are often felt like they're not asked.
Right.
So why would we?
It's a great idea. Thank you for the suggestion. We'll try to act on that. I think that's a
Yeah,
great
right,
idea.
yeah.
Because there's YP groups now in so many areas. Do you have one in Middlebury? Yeah? So- No? So, young professional groups. And they're sprouting up in various places. Rutland is probably the most active one. Wyndham County has one. So, the other thing that we could do too is, as we go forward, we could invite the YP groups to that region too, so that we could do it both in.
And if I may, I represent the Community College of Vermont. We serve 10,000 Vermonters, and over 90% of them stay in Vermont.
Yeah.
We've done this work,
Yeah.
and we can share that data.
Yeah,
That would be great. We'll connect afterwards.
We left your card. Yeah.
Already got your card, great. We'll connect you to the Futures Project to make sure that they have that data. So that's where we're gonna start the conversation. And then, since we've done this in a couple of other areas, we're gonna pre-populate some of the categories that we see, so that we can sort of jumpstart the conversation around the targeted groups that we would like to think about. How do we get more of these people here? So, Ashley, are you gonna start with the tourists? Have you got a couple of those? I don't know if we can put these up on the walls.
Yeah, I was looking
around.
at space.
You can put some here. So a couple of the groups that we have seen, one of the most, and what we've got about 5 groups that we're gonna shout out to you, and then you're gonna add more big groups. And then what we're gonna do is think about ways that we can attract those groups of people. All right, does this make sense? So one of the groups that we've seen that folks talk about are tourists. We have about 80,000 visitors within 80 million visitors within a day's drive of Vermont. And we do a really good job in this state of attracting those people here for a weekend or for a week. How do we talk to those tourists as a way to get them to think about living and working? So that's one group. Yeah, you can just move that out of the way. Yeah.
I have a question before you go down this road.
Sure.
Is the focus here attraction or retention?
Attractive. New people.
What are we doing about retaining our own people?
Yeah, we can talk about that as well if you'd like. The numbers show us that even if we keep every single college student here that goes to Springfield,
That's not enough.
it's not enough.
We're losing more than we should.
Right, so we are at about 50% of each of these. So we graduate about 9,000 college students a year in this state, and about half of them are staying and going into the workforce. So if you'd like, we could talk about retention, because it is a population that we need to keep here. Can we do a better job of keeping the other half of college kids here? We can talk about that. If you want to couple that with high school students, because about half of our high school students are not going into the workforce for a variety of different reasons, right? A lot of them are going into college. Some of them are going to out-of-state schools, which then starts a path that they're not. So we can talk about retention. The reason that we haven't focused on retention is because a lot of attention has been focused there over the years. And there's been no focus on recruiting new people. And so we feel like with all of the programs and attention on how do we keep our youth here, there's a lot of people, a lot of brains working on that. We don't need to duplicate that effort. We'd like to figure out, how do we get some more people? If we have a new idea about keeping our youth here, let's write it down. I'm not opposed to that at all. Love that. Yes, and then yes.
But what I'm hearing, I get a really good sense of, there was a terrific report or study that was done, the telling of the Vermont story, and the investment and what that exercise revealed. And I found that to be a wonderful starting point. I think is getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the heart of where you potentially are going with this. That I thought the idea, which was it was a feasibility on marketing Vermont.
It's the marketing plan for the Addison County.
I know that, yes.
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 So just how does that dovetail into what I see working here? Because I would see it as a natural fit.
It is a natural fit. That's a marketing.
Right.
And it tells you things that we should market. And we should definitely do that. So it was the Vermont Chamber's initial idea to do that. We were the ones who went to Governor Shumlin at the time and said, we've never done any economic development marketing in this state recently to get anybody here to say, come to Vermont work. We usually say, come and visit. So we were able to secure the initial $200,000 that the State Department did that marketing plan. So we're thrilled with that work. Last year we came back and said, okay, the marketing plan is great. We need money to execute it. And you folks, Diane specifically, get a little bit of money, $250,000 to begin executing it. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a lobbyist for businesses, I'm going to be standing in front of you again this year going, we need a little bit more. And every year we need a little bit more to execute that. At the end of the day, we need to tell people that we want them here. And that's what that marketing plan does. And a lot of that is money. And in that marketing plan, it does lay out things that we can market. What this exercise is trying to do is get a little bit more ammunition for that marketing plan. So what else can we say to them? When we're marketing, should we be marketing to people to defer their retirement? Should we be marketing to tourists and say, hey, you loved us for a weekend, how about staying for a lifetime? How about people who are coming home or returners? I think this is sort of one of the categories that you were just talking about. How do we go find them? Is there something that we can entice them with? What's a solution there? Retention, so she put the retention piece up there for you, which those two things are a little bit like families. Should we specifically be looking at families? So when you go out and do a marketing plan, let's imagine for a minute you had $20 million to do the best marketing plan in the world. If you try to be everything to all people, it will fail. And it's why Coca-Cola has 7 different brands and like 3 different Diet Cokes. I don't even know, they got Diet Coke Vanilla and then Diet Coke and then Diet Coke Zero and all these other things. It's because not everybody is the same flavor. They're trying to market to different folks. So our question with very limited dollars, we can't say Vermont is great and wonderful because of community and it's clean and safe. People already know this about us. How do we go about, is there anything that we can add, whether that's a policy decision, an individual action, a business doing something? So yeah, go ahead.
along those lines, do you have a breakdown of how many jobs of those 11,000 pay above $20 an hour, say? How many jobs pay between 20 and 50? How many jobs pay 75,000 a year? And so then you can aim. You can go to some other part of the country and say Vermont this is how many $50,000 jobs we have.
It's a good idea. So can you just draw a line under like urban refugees for a minute and just start one more thing for me called needs. Yep. So what you're asking for is sort of what I call a demand study, a needs study. I think you've got in front of you, right? Who passed this grade?
Just pointed someone.
Yeah.
Pointed out, thank you.
So this is a really good start to that. The McClure Foundation and Pathways to Promising Careers put this together. This is an excellent start. The only thing about this is that this is using federal data and it's extrapolated for Vermont, which is better than having nothing, right? Like this is a really good start. I think what you're even asking for is that next level of granular detail, which is how many pipe fitters do we need in Vermont and what do they pay, right? So there's a company up in Colchester that pays $24 an hour for starting wage. It's a union shop, so once you get in, you're probably going to be good to go as long as you're doing the right things, you're showing up to work, good benefits. All they need is a high school degree and they'll train you. They pay 100% college reimbursement and they can't get anybody to work for them. All you need is a high school degree, no training. They can't get people to work. And they're in Chittenden County. So that is playing itself out around the state.
But do you advertise out of the state?
Yes.
Because that's where you have to go to get people to come into the state.
So a lot of employers, especially larger employers, and when I say larger employers, I'll tell you in Vermont, so federal government says, this SBA, federal government says that the large employers, 500 or more employees, by that rate, just about every single employer with the exception of 5 are small employers in Vermont. So when I say large employers myself, I'm a Vermont girl, I'm thinking like if you've got 100, 200 employees, you're a pretty big employer in Vermont. And yes, we have some employers that have more than that, like a lot more, but they're few and far between. So this employer is in that range. So I think of them as a really large employer. And any employer of that size has got an HR director, often an HR team, and they're doing that. They're going out of state. They're, scrubbing LinkedIn for Vermont connections. They're holding job fairs and going to job fairs. They're going to colleges. There's just not enough applicants in the pool. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I follow your cadence in this process. Later on, we're going to talk more about how we fill the skills gap, because I don't necessarily think it's going to require attracting a whole lot of new people, but I do have some ideas about this particularly.
So on the skills gap, we can talk about that. This is your show. We can talk about anything. My feeling on the skills gap is there are a ton of people working in Vermont with a load of money working on the skills gap. We see that all the time. CCD at the core of that, absolutely. We see training money. We have a 300-person Department of Labor. They have $60 million from federal and state going into training programs for these people who are unemployed to fill that skills gap. That work is going on. I'm not sure our employers are getting what they need from that because they're asking for more people. They've seen all those people. They've seen the unemployed. They've seen the trained, and they can't get them to come work.
All right, so to respond
So
to
the
that,
work is happening.
It's not, so we're not making a great direct match between unemployed people
Correct.
and the jobs that are out there. What
Correct.
we are able to do is to re-employ people who find themselves in positions with not a long-term career potential. So we're in effect poaching people from retail and hospitality,
Yep.
training them into careers that
Needs
have
to
$20
happen.
an hour wage
Yep.
jobs. That creates a vacuum at this quote-unquote low end that allows people in that 3% pool to move in. We've seen that in Rutland and elsewhere.
And we
But-
need that.
But beyond that, to speak to your, how to attract new folks, New York has been doing a tremendous job at this through tax incentives. They've done this with business.
Yep.
They've offered tax incentives. And now through funding 40-year institutions over there, we're starting to see families plan on moving our children, okay, over to New York, live there for a year, accessing those 40-year institutions, and then they stay.
Yep.
And so Vermont needs to get on board, and that's going to help keep those folks here. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see a net migration, not just of our English population.
So, starting now in the solution, thank you for
Yes.
getting a solution. When you think about that, I try to phrase it with a verb at the front of that, okay? So create, I'm just trying to, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Create incentives for, what did you say, tax incentives for businesses was one, like New York. And then also perhaps think about implementing free college tuition similar to the New York plan.
Similar to New York plan, that
Those two
it
things.
only is funded if the student stays in Vermont, works in Vermont for X number of years, or whatever they determine. Sure.
And so, Ashley, I see you're writing that under retention, and I agree with that, but it also can be recruitment, to your point,
Sure.
in the sense that, okay, so this would be an incentive to have our Vermonters not take advantage of the New York thing and stay here, so that's the retention piece. But then also thinking about, well, maybe somebody from Maine will try to establish residency in Vermont and take advantage of that free tuition. So, okay, great, excellent. Other ideas? Yeah.
I have a question. Has any research been done in asking these people why they left?
Yes, UVM has done a great report called the Leavers Report. L-E-A-V-E, Leavers, those who have left. They did a study on trying to figure out why did you leave and what would make you come back. It's a great report. You can Google UVM Leavers Report, it will come right up. They will tell you from the get-go that it's not scientific. For UVM staff folks were talking one day about they were all Vermont high school students and UVM grads, and they were wondering where all their friends were. So they went onto Facebook and tried to create a group for their high school alumni and just were asking all the same questions. They thought they were going to get like maybe 200 or 300. They ended up getting something like 5,000 responses from Vermont high school, like in various places in the state. And then it just kept going, right? So when things go viral, it works really well. So they'll tell you it was unscientific, but yet the data that they brought forth, it's pretty incredible, and probably not something that you wouldn't think of. Why did you say, well, I moved out for college, and then I got a job here, and then my life began, right? So I think we see that. So there's, I don't have the Leaders Report committed to memory, but it is out there.
I can't imagine why you don't.
There's a lot of data out there, so I don't know
come
all
up
of
with
it.
a plan to get people to come back if we don't know why they left. Because you need to address their particular issues.
Yep.
If they're leaving because taxes are too high, then tax incentives may work. But if that's not why they left, a tax incentive won't necessarily bring them back.
Well, and so expanding that to beyond just the leavers category that we have up here, to anybody, if you offer a tax incentive, is that something that's going to make people move here? So let me ask you this. For those of you who were not born and raised here, when you moved here, was it for a tax incentive? Raise your hand. That's not unusual in every audience that we've done. So what are the reasons people move to Vermont? I would ask you to look back at the pink sticky note. Okay, ooh, wow, that's pretty funny. 1, 2, and then 3, go ahead.
I actually moved here for a job in my family, but I wanted to talk about why I didn't want to move here or what made it hard to move here, which was housing costs
Yep.
and availability. It's like
That's a need. So put that under obstacles, obstacles
It was
needs.
so easy to find housing there, and housing was cheap. You could buy a house, and it's easy to raise your family here, but it's not easy to find a place to house your family that's affordable. So I think that's
So for any of these groups, tourists, returners, even deferred retirement folks or families, we've got to fix the housing problem in Vermont. So I wouldn't put that on any one thing. So we're starting a new thing here about things that we need to do to do this. So one thing on here was, you had talked about sort of the demand study, and could we go maybe one level deeper here and actually get really strong Vermont data here, so that we knew that we needed 20 pipe fitters in Addison County or whatever it is we need, and what their salaries are. So that's here. And so we put, so affordable housing, or housing that's affordable to the working, it's a funny term. Affordable housing has come to mean low-income housing, but so many people who are in the workforce mean, I just need a house that's affordable to me. So it doesn't mean low-income housing, but sometimes we call that market rate housing. Sometimes we call it workforce housing. But for me, workforce housing sort of connotates this, thing where like the employer is setting up little shacks for you to live in. So it's not that either. So, but we know what we're talking about in this room, okay? We'll come up with a better term, so thank you. And I'll just call your attention to the other side of the card that you have here. On the other side are the 6 growth targets that the Vermont Futures Project has projected. These are targets for 2040, not for next year, okay? So for legislators in the room, it's not for next year. And here it talks about the need of having 5,000 new and retrofitted homes. Because if you're gonna have 10,000 new people come, we all want our downtowns to retrofit the 2nd and 3rd floors. There's incentives for that currently. That has been going on for, Governor, 30 years?
Yeah, we tried to boost them actually.
Yeah, I can't even remember how long it's been going on, and it's still not happening. So, but people still need housing. So there's other things people want other than living in the 2nd and 3rd floors. We have programs for that, and they're good. We just need to do more.
I think one of the key.
Wait, hang on 1 second.
Mine was the same.
Okay, same housing. Okay. Go ahead.
In terms of solutions?
Yes.
Another thing I think we have a problem with is enough childcare, daycare,
Yeah.
especially affordable daycare.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, of course, is to attract people. If you increase wages and benefits, you get people.
Yep.
That's proven. So one of the, I think, challenges
But
that your
I would
approach.
challenge you on it's proven.
Well, like out in the Dakotas, they had this big boom of
Yeah.
jobs, and they were paying, and people were moving in like crazy.
To have jobs that
Right, when
pay well.
there's good paying jobs,
Good
people
paying
show
jobs.
up. People show up.
So is it
one
good
of the
paying jobs, or does increased wages, or both?
Increased wages and benefits, that's what I'm talking about, because that's what
Do you
produces a
have-
good paying job.
Do you have a target in mind of what you think a good paying job is?
For every job, it's different.
I know, but what would attract, and you don't have to answer this.
You know, above the typical wage, for example. When you
So
offer
anything about
better,
$10 an hour,
No,
or
it depends on the
15,
job.
20?
but yeah, if we became a $15 an hour minimum wage state, we get a lot of people.
Okay.
For example, that's just a start, but that's not, the other problem that I want to get to here is that the approach is kind of got some challenges to it, because when you have a tight job market, it puts upward pressure on your wages. And to attract people, employers have to pay more.
In theory.
And so it's actually better for the employees.
Right.
Not as good for the company, because they want to make more profit, but it's better for the employees.
So the make more profit thing I would challenge only because in this state, we're not a state of a lot of corporate type, profiteering type folks. So they tend to be more like Two Brothers Tavern across the street. Yeah, those guys probably want to make a profit, right? But they also want to retain their employees. So I think you're right. Naturally, where you have low unemployment and the pool's not strong in that low unemployment, I, as an employer, really want to keep my employees because I know if they leave, I'm not going to be able to find a good quality person to come back in. Years ago that might have been different. So I'm going to do what it takes to keep them, regardless of, is that a benefit or is that a wage increase or a flex schedule or whatever. So I think we're seeing some of that, but I think what we're starting to see nationally is that economic theory of tight labor market increased wages isn't happening as much as we would like, right? We're seeing it a little bit, but we're still not seeing wage growth where we want to see. So that's a challenge, for me, somebody who's looked at economic trends, that's supposed to be happening better than it is now. So I think your point is valid, we've written it down here, increase wages and benefits.
The other thing to be careful of is I think that if we're successful in attracting a lot of people to the state for the employee market, it's going to negatively impact a lot of those quality of life things that bring people here. It's more crowded, you got more traffic, congestion on the roads, more pollution. So that's why I think retention is actually a better focus. Not that we should ignore bringing more people in, but we don't want to turn, I personally don't want to turn Middlebury into a big metropolis city. You know, that's not.
If we add 10,000 people to the workforce across the state as large as ours with 625,000 people
Every year,
every year, so let's say we got to 700,000 in population. I think that's a far cry from turning us into New Jersey.
but that's in 10 years, and if that's the plan and you've got that in place and you're doing it every year. The other thing we also have to realize is we're going to have a lot of people moving to the state. They're called climate refugees, not just from other countries, but from our own country, from all the coastal towns and cities that are going to get flooded out, and people are moving inland.
So what can we do about that? So I've been calling them disaster refugees. I don't understand why Vermont doesn't go to Puerto Rico right now and say, listen, we need you. You know, again, we don't need, let's just find 1,000. They're US citizens, speak English, they, you know, workers, let's help them out. Or go to California.
But where would they live?
Right?
Again,
And who's going to take care of their kids?
Yeah, so, but with that, so here's the thing. I hear you, we've got a million problems we've got to fix, right? And what I hear many of you saying is, well, we can't invite anybody here until we fix all these problems first. We need to have better housing, better transportation. We have to be careful of where we let them live because we don't want to ruin what we love about our town. Okay, but the alternative is to see these drivers of population continue to have more births than deaths in this state. If we retain everybody we've got right now, we've got 625,000 people in this state, we are not talking about doubling our population. We are not talking about that. You want to go ask the young people what they want? I have a 24-year-old and a 25-year-old. They are not here. You know why? They want something more than what they grew up with, okay? They want stuff to do. They want to meet people that are their age, and not just the one or two in town. They want more of that. And so it's not that unusual of a trend that you would leave Vermont and go find that. And then maybe at a different point in your life, when you're ready for a different thing in your life, maybe you found your significant other, maybe you're starting to think that you want a little house with a little yard as opposed to a condo in the city. At that point, maybe Vermont's lifestyle becomes more important. So I think that's why one of these ideas about how do we, instead of retaining the 22, 23, 24-year-old, how do we let them go? Because they're already, to some extent, going. And then get them to come back. So I think that's all fine. Yes, and then go.
Okay, I see the fundamental issue is the gap between the available wages and the cost of living here. I have a son-in-law who was making $75,000 in Boston as a carpenter supervisor. He comes to Vermont, he can't find a job comparable for $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of living is the same in both places.
Yeah.
I'm a blended family with 5 kids. 4 of them are back in the States, but every single one of them had to either establish a stakehold before they could afford to come back, or we had to support them. Because they couldn't find housing, they couldn't find high-paying jobs. There's that gap that we have to deal with. And whether we're talking about retention or attraction, we're not going to attract people if they have to take a 25 or 30% salary cut to come here, and their cost of living is the same.
So what do we do to fix that? We know what the problems are. We know. And we have lots of money, state money and federal money, going in to fix those problems. I do not even know, I cannot even hazard a guess, maybe one of the legislators in the room wants to, how much money we spend on affordable housing in the state. Not just state money.
But again,
It's a
that
huge amount.
affordable housing is a different, that affordable housing that you're talking about is a definition that's different than what what
Market
we're
rate.
talking about, like looking at our median income
Yep.
and the housing that's available. I just wanna, so each one of these big post-its up there, we're talking about a marketing campaign to bring those people in?
Not
to a certain
necess-
extent,
not
or-
necessarily.
Because we keep talking about what we're in deficit of,
Yeah.
but what we're
So-
supposed to be, are we supposed to be focusing on what we have that we can market or?
What in an ideal world, what I would like you to do is come up with things that we should do to address our issues and recruit people to Vermont. At the end of the day, that might become a marketing campaign that says, come to Vermont because we have clean air and clean water. Come to Vermont because we don't have wildfires. It could be a marketing campaign that, follows the outline of what the marketing campaign that we've already got with the state. But their slogan there is, a state makes a difference. Yes, it does. You need to explain to people a little bit more why. So our point is, where is this? Perhaps create a tax incentive for businesses like yours. That's something, and then you market that. Create a college tuition reimbursement, and then you market that. There's always, at the end of something, you have to tell somebody you changed something in Vermont. So Vermont is known for, what we're doing right now, October, beautiful foliage, great skiing, beer. The beer is awesome. We've got beer tourism going crazy. That's what people know us for. But when they drive home down I-91 in the dark of night on a Sunday night, and they leave here to go back to Boston, do you know what they see? Have you ever driven that? I have. They see nothing. And if you're a Boston person that loves Vermont because you love to ski or you come here every year for foliage or whatever your thing is, and you're like, God, I would love to live here, but for the love of God, what do these people do? We need to tell them. We're here because we love Vermont, and you can make a life here. And yes, we have problems. Yes, we have a skills gap. Yes, we need affordable homes. We need all of that. But it's us who are going to dig in and come up with the solutions to make little changes and then tell somebody that. And part of it is that we need to convince our legislature that marketing Vermont as a place to live and work is important. $250,000 every year for the next 10 years is not going to make a blip on getting anybody to see what we already know. Yes?
So this is a lot of information. I feel like we're going in a few different directions. So I'm a career advisor at Middlebury, and I work with the students there who have come here, but they're not from here. And I think about whether you call them retention or attraction. So I think you can put them in different buckets. But when I work with these students, for the most part, it's always going to be focused on East Coast cities, New York, Boston, San Francisco, where there's the tech industry and renewables. But with most of these students, what I hear is a different framing than the way how you put this why Vermont. That is why Vermont, the people, the community, the sense of purpose is just why a job. They want a job that has purpose. They want a job that helps people. And it doesn't matter. I mean, our top 3 industries are finance, consulting, and education. Those 3 industries where Middlebury grads go. So what I think about is why multinationals leave the United States and go over the border to another country. Why aren't we trying to attract maybe some of these multinationals into Vermont and not maybe just a Morgan Stanley one guy office, but maybe we should be making it more attractive, and maybe this is what people are saying, more attractive to attract the multinationals, the corporations here. So we're doing a really great job on the innovation front. We're seeing way more Middlebury grads staying here in Vermont and wanting to stay in Vermont, not just because of the jobs, but because they're making the jobs. And I commend our innovation centers and our hubs, and we need more of those. So I feel like the state has definitely put, and I think the institutions are focusing in that area on innovation. But, you know, if we're really talking about, and I know we're not talking about all the jobs, yes, here.
There's a
but-
lot to do.
But there is a layer there of the corporate piece that, if, you know, I look at Epic in
Yes.
Madison, Wisconsin. Epic, you know, runs all of our healthcare computer systems around the country. And Epic has created a Google-like campus in the middle of Madison, Wisconsin. And most of the attraction for those young people isn't because it's Madison, Wisconsin. It's because Epic has created this very like wonderful, you know, place to live where, you know, people can come in jeans and they can have a latte machine and they get sent out on consulting projects all over the country. So they don't really stay in Madison 24/7. There's an airport and they can get out. So I'm gonna stop there.
No, so I love this idea, and we're trying to encapsulate it. So we make Vermont more attractive to multi-state, multinational corps, but I'm gonna add something there. Sort of, part of it is not just any multinational corp, but those sort of a progressive type company that match sort of Vermont as well. Because you're talking about that have figured out the culture of where young people want to work.
Like dealer.com.
Like dealer.com.
Well, and renewables are all over the country. We've got great examples of
Exactly. And we do have that good
power
industry.
technology.
Yep.
Technology can be, you can bring that and it can be here, but it powers, you know, a
Yeah.
coast. It,
So let's just take that one step further.
Scott has something to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's hard to see. Well, I just, if you want to get back on the housing thing. 'cause
Are
I'm
you
trying
Scott?
to,
Good to see you.
What's that?
Good to see you.
Yeah. So, we talk about affordable housing. How many people in the room want to sell their house for half what they paid for it? Right? You don't. And then you talk about what makes something affordable, and it's efficiency. So how can we make, and energy, we want to create, all new housing stock should be net zero. Just, we should be. Technology's there, it's easy. But the process is the difficult part. And so if you think about how granular that process is, town by town has basically a volunteer board. And I use this analogy of imagine watching a football game where every play, they took a 1 month break. So watching, you know, the Giants play or the Patriots, 1 month, okay, we just got from down the other way. And this process is really kind of the juggernaut of, you know, everyone says, we want affordable housing, but, you know, then everyone goes, well, where? And then they go, well, this is all about total local control. So, I mean, I don't know how many people here have been or are on local DRBs, and it's a thankless job that you volunteer nights and you're grinding through, but it's about, that's the roadblock. So if you think about how many square feet of solar panels have been added over the past 3 or 4 years, was that all locally controlled by the DRB? No, it was an entirely different process. And that's why we're all going, wait, they're popping up. I mean, I'm all for renewables. I think that it has to be balanced. If we put them on buildings instead of on shields, it's better. But there's something about, you know, you can only develop within 5 miles, just the whole Act 250 process. And I think that there's got to be a change to this. Without giving it local control, but giving the ability to have some efficient processes to do. Because I went through a program in Virginia to do, originally it was going to be 9 homes, basically I had the density math work, and then it got whittled down to 7, and then it got whittled down to 6, and then it didn't get approved, and I literally spent probably $30,000 in engineering ahead of all that to get denied. I'm still trying to do this, but that's money out of my own pocket. That's
Not
$50,000
And not
or $3,000.
recoverable, right?
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's speculation.
So let me ask you this, and then I see you got your hand up. If you could, I hear this frequently, not just about housing, building housing, but I hear this about, anytime you put a shovel in the earth somewhere in Vermont to do anything like that. We hear that. The process is the problem. Can you give us a concrete example of what could be fixed there? Or can you give us maybe not concrete, but like a start? Because what we intend to do with all of this is, hand this off to the Futures Project, have them do the research and come up with the best 5 recommendations to close this gap. If housing is truly the problem, what could we do to streamline that development process that you're talking about?
You're talking about taking it out of local control, and that's,
Okay, so-
there's people who are on the board specifically to not have any more houses going.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
I would say people will rally against something much quicker than they will rally for something.
So let me try to put that in a way that is to streamline the housing development process to be at the state level without local control.
And they're trying, I know the governor has an initiative that is being put forth that certain, that's Act 250 and certain services.
All right, so Diane, so then back here, and then here, and then here.
He's done an incredible amount of work on this, so I can point to him as an example of where great innovation on housing didn't make it all the way through, with a lot of good ideas, and then right down the street in Virgins is the other very good example of maybe on the housing piece that we can point to as Vermonters, that was written in the New York Times about Waltham, Vermont, and our Vermonts, the Vermont modular issue and a public-private partnership with Green Mountain Power. These are all innovative Vermont solutions to housing. Right down the street from me is 14 brand-new units for
So
families.
how do we make it
That
more?
And that's the one that's where they got it right, and that would be
How
a
do we
terrific with
duplicate
more.
that around the state?
Exactly.
That's the question.
And that would be the way to invest in that direction.
Duplicate the Waltham project.
That's a different part. Now I'm actually utilizing the Vermont Builder for what my project was, which was 600 to 1,300 square foot multi-unit cottages, using the Vermont Builder, but trying to bring it a little up market, nicer finishes. But it's like you're talking still. It's a lengthy process to go outside of Act 250, and as well as trying to get through the board.
So it's interesting, it's timely, because right now the legislature is undergoing a 1.5-year-long Act 250 study on what can we do differently, keeping the principles the same, because we don't want to change the principles, but how can we make the process bigger, better, faster, stronger? And that's something that Ashley's involved with, and so, Scott, we're going to tap into your brain through that process. But okay, I'm sorry, I've got to back up here of going, what we're trying to do, we're identifying lots of needs that you want. We don't have a whole lot of solutions as to how to recruit more people here. You've identified all the obstacles in Vermont. The wages aren't enough, we don't have enough big jobs, we need more mass transit, we need more housing, got that. Imagine something positive that we could do to encourage more people to come here. Robin.
I'm going to get back on my soapbox for something I've been talking about for a few years, and it's related to tourists, and it's a specific action.
All right.
And I think that we should have job fairs on the weekends at ski areas.
Okay, I love that.
People are here.
Did you hear
At the end of the
everybody how
day-
she had a positive action that we
I
could
give you an
do
example.
tomorrow?
Right, I mean, I'm serious about this.
Yeah, I love
We are
it.
hitting people when they love Vermont. They've had a great time, there's a brew thing going on, or let's not limit it to beer, we have wine and spirits here in Addison County.
So we agree. I love that idea.
And so you could do it for other things as well, but that
Sure.
would be the first place.
So here's a little interesting tidbit. Anybody know about the Big E?
Yeah.
That way?
Oh, yeah.
You might know about that.
Yeah, right.
So the Big E, we have, I don't even know what this data is, but thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people going through the Big E. And we have the Vermont building, and we have them sample every product in Vermont. People love the Vermont building because they're eating maple and cheese and beer and whatever. Wonderful. Do you know what happened this year? It's a very teeny little thing, but I loved it. I saw it somewhere. Some woman buried in the Department of Labor, who also loves going to the Big E, developed postcards that said, the job title, $54,000 a year, Virgins, Vermont. Well, it wasn't Virgins, but and handed out cards like that to those people who were eating and drinking and enjoying Vermont for a day. I was like,
Brilliant.
brilliant. Blow that up. Make that
that's
bigger.
the
Give
same
her more
idea. So
cards.
where
Send her to the Big E. So
Right, where else can we
like
do
that?
So that's my first thing.
Yeah,
So
love
where
it.
else can we do those job fairs? The second thing is, we are a state that lacks diversity ridiculously. So I talk to employers who have talked about the issue that they, I mean, some of our larger employers have diversity requirements, and it's pretty difficult in the state of Vermont. So I think urban refugees is not, and climate refugees aren't enough. We need to focus on immigrants. I actually love the idea of people from Puerto Rico, because they are our own citizens, but I think that we need to look at immigrants.
Put them under urban refugees over here.
It's a very important focus that we need to do. I don't have a specific
New Americans.
topic, but.
Yep. So I like the concept, New Americans have come up in a lot of towns that we've done this in, is to try to figure out how to get more new Americans to come to Vermont. And there have been some unique ideas around that. Chittenden County's got quite a bit of infrastructure around that. We get about, we've had 6,200 new Americans move into Vermont in the past 7 years. So about 800 a year. So that's about, this year it's going to be a lot less. But
I
we
think
have an
that's
infrastructure to handle
just
about
a
that.
hugely important piece, and I think Vermont is uniquely situated. They're gonna cut all of our federal funding, but we don't get that much anyway. So I say, help and open our doors to refugees.
Yeah.
I mean, Germany did not open their doors because of their humanitarian issues. They opened it because they didn't have enough workers to run the machine.
So absolutely, so whether they're
And
Mormons
if you
on the
take
east part of the
the
state or
Newski
Syrians on the
as
west
an
part of the state,
example
yep.
of how that generates a vibrant economy and a vibrant community that young people want to come and live in.
Yep. Love it.
They're doing great.
So we all now have determined we want new Americans. What specifically do you think we could do to attract them?
Well, you have to ignore United States immigration policy.
So ignore. See, you did that perfectly. That's the way I asked. You started it with a verb, ignore. And like I said, we're going to synthesize all these ideas to what's the realm of the possible. But so we have some immigration problems obviously going on with federal government right now. We do have some infrastructure here. So, okay, so I love this idea. Yes, go ahead.
How about just talking to the ones who are already here and finding out where we can reach out to their families, their friends?
So the way I sort of envision this is all of these are just little gems of ideas, and every idea needs research and thought before you get to, yes, that's a good idea. That's probably part of all of us. Talk to the leaders. Why did they leave, and find out. Talk to the new Americans that are here and find out, what brought you here and how do we get more of you. So certainly, that's the research piece that comes after the idea generation. So absolutely. Yes, and then yes.
So I was just gonna say, in going with the New Americans and the reach out to Puerto Rico, Holyoke, Massachusetts does a huge reach out to the Puerto Rican community.
Yes.
They just had a big thing on NPR regarding that, so it'd be a good sister city to communicate with. And
Before Puerto Rico, I was on this kick, because I get all my ideas from BPR. I don't know about the rest of them. This morning I heard about Granny Flats. Anybody heard about Granny Flats?
yes.
I'm like, oh, I just said to Ashley at 6:30 this morning, hey, go research that law in California and find out what we could do in Vermont to do Granny Flats in Vermont. I don't know if it'll work, but before this I was thinking, why don't we just take a contingent of Vermonters, CCD and everybody else, and go to Vermont, go to Detroit and say, so, we don't have that high-paying job anymore. We have these jobs in manufacturing in Vermont. Come, set up a little mini Detroit here. That was my idea until Puerto Rico happened. So now I'm like, I'm willing to take an urban refugee, a climate refugee, a disaster refugee. I am not partial to where you're from. I just need more workers here. So yes, and then yes. Go
I
ahead.
think one of the things we can do to attracting our people is to put in place programs that help reduce or eliminate the college debt that our graduates get. So they're not so pressured to go and move to a city where there's higher paying jobs and they get more likely to stay here. I mean, you already say half the college graduates already stay here. And if we had, say, free college in-state tuition, all our state schools would be full.
Reimbursed.
And, I think that's a possibility.
I think it's a great idea. Matter of fact, in 2005, I knew a governor who proposed that and was shot down. So I love that idea.
Maybe we could try to.
I actually tried to push that through the legislature.
yeah.
So maybe we'll try it again. I've got 1, 2, and then I'll come back to you. I'm sorry I didn't see you. So, yes.
I was just thinking that what you really need is not just a marketing campaign, but like recruiters.
Sure.
When you talk about going to Detroit or going for, you really need people.
That's not a marketing campaign, right? I totally get that. We pull together like a group of
Like almost a cooperative recruiter,
HR.
not like, oh, this company, because the companies are so small, they can't hire recruiters on their own, but maybe a cooperative recruiter.
Maybe the Vermont Chamber of Commerce could set up sort of a recruiting team to go to Puerto Rico and talk to those employers and, or not us, just somebody, that kind of thing. So you've got that set up, a co-op, a recruiter, needs staff recruiters to handle the process of going to various areas. Love that. Yes, you had an idea.
We moved here, my husband was hired by the Middlebury Police Department. To become a police officer, there are about 8 stages of testing and interviewing that you go through. We almost went to Oakland, because in Oakland you can fly out for a weekend and they will do all of those 8 stages in a condensed weekend. To move to Vermont, he had to travel to Vermont 5 or 6 times to get through all of those hoops. And we wanted it, and we ended up here. And
So
we
I love
it.
that, and we need
But-
law enforcement, so.
Yes,
So that's a great idea,
if you
thank you.
could just condensing the process for people who need to travel to it would be huge.
And I would be curious, what other, so that's law enforcement, are there other industries or careers that are like that? So great, we're capturing that, thank you, lovely. Yes?
I think we have to fix the economic engine. We talked about the cost of housing. But the other side is, not an economic engine. Money is here, the jobs are competitive. If the companies are competitive, if the companies can afford to pay all the wages, people will come. People want to live here. We don't have to convince people to.
Yeah.
We just have to make it affordable so that the sacrifices they make coming to live in Vermont is not unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that by getting legislation back to big business, particularly manufacturing.
Like,
Well, I have a small business.
Mhm.
We had an intern this summer. And then we earned 3 days a week for 8 weeks. We had to get workers' compensation.
yeah.
That took a full day of my partner's time to find out who we had to go see. The Camp School for temporary employees, the state said, okay, you can be part of this school.
Love that idea, great.
I mean, I can give you another one. I
Yeah.
ran a factory 20 years ago. OSHA came one morning for inspection. We had a light snow. He pushed open the back door and then said, oh, here's a $5,000 fine. You block this. I mean, you didn't shovel the snow. It's opening up the fire exit that I just pushed open. Now, how is that? Those are 2 little examples of how the regular we need to change, and we need to hold institutions. We're doing what the legislation, I'm having their work, they're only doing this man, woman, he said. It's very easy for someone to railroad or to veto a project, but it's very hard to get one through. When I opened the factory in Burlington, I had to get a container from Montreal because we don't have a railroad that will we can get one railroad. They want to put their tires so you can have one container. We have people that can say, you look at the diesel, prices must have put in somebody didn't like it. I think we have to find a way where if the general consensus is, it just goes find a way we can go along with it. You say, back to the
So, we're going to do community. I was going to modify your suggestion. You're asking for streamlining the level of input that interested parties or even non-interested parties can have. We have several avenues for it. It's endless. So streamline the standings in development projects, which might also.
hate to go back, but I will. In the middle of the 19th, and I think it was with some of the then called the Greater Vermont Association.
Before my time, Steve, but yeah.
Of course, and
I've read the
it's
history.
Vermont too. But there were a number of places around the country that had people from Vermont that moved there. And they were called Vermont Associations, I think. There was an active recruiting effort to go to these places, wherever it was in the country, to urge people to either come home or urge their children to think about Vermont. Now, the population of the state was then about 340,000.
So it worked.
But there was, and then in the 1960s and 70s, was here, we had something called the Beckoning Country Marketing Campaign. Ostensibly, it was for tourism, but the reality was it opened people's eyes to Vermont, and we came and we stayed. And we had the most intensive growth in the last 100 years in those 2 decades.
In that 70s.
14% population increase each year, each decade. Now, we're flat, or even, as you pointed out, we're slowly declining. So we have to do something radically different.
Something has to be radically different, or else that decline will be a problem for us. So interesting perspective. So back to that recruiting idea, this is slightly different. There's a group in DC called the Vermont State Society, right? I'm not really sure who runs that or what it is. It's sort of a loose thing, but basically if you're living in DC and you have some affiliation with Vermont, and my guess is from watching their Twitter feed, it tends to be skews a little younger than me. You can meet at a bar.
Is the vice chair.
Oh, perfect.
So he's in his early 30s.
My son is in DC but hasn't connected yet because he's not in politics. But like that, what you're talking about is something like that. So is there a Vermont State Society, or call it whatever you will, in Boston? So it's kind of, I almost feel of it like we all have alumni at some college, and you have
UVM does a little bit of.
So maybe there's a way to think about working with colleges, but also with sort of the recruiters of the state to couple that with not just come feel good about UVM or come have a drink and think about Vermont, but with a purpose. And so that's a neat idea on the recruitment side. So again, this is an idea that doesn't require necessarily state funding. It's not a legislative action. We don't have to go fight the federal administration on it. It's something individuals, private sector, somebody could do with some organization. And it's something that could bear fruit. So this is why we're doing this brainstorming. We know there's lots of obstacles, but we got to start doing something. You can have your hand up for a while, I'm sorry.
This is just a model, you may well be aware of it, but have you heard about the work and play in Maine, or live and work in Maine? And they have their
Wasn't the New York
tagline,
Times or the Journal or something, wasn't it?
Make vacation land work for you, or they have lines about visit for a week, stay for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And it might just be something worth researching, both in terms of how much the state government is supporting it, as well as what the benefits are they're reaping.
It's a really neat idea. I read one article about it, and one of the things that they're doing is they've created a recruiters sort of group, and they're using social media to their advantage. They're scrubbing the LinkedIn universe for any connection 10 or 15 years ago that you had to make, and making a direct plea to you to come home or return. These are the levers. And what I loved about it is we could steal all those ideas because we're not competing with them. We don't want the Maine, in that sense, we wouldn't be looking for the Mainers to come back. We could duplicate that and be looking for that. And I know when I've talked to HR directors in the state, a lot of them use that technique for themselves. They'll search LinkedIn for, mechanical engineer in Vermont and get a pool, and then directly.
But I think it's also targeting the tourists who are coming into Maine without necessarily having roots there, and making a connection to, like you were saying earlier, you've enjoyed your week here, how about staying here?
And what we're hearing from, we were just in the valley, which is very tourist heavy, obviously, and one of the suggestions that came up there was, is there some way that you can turn our B&B owners, our attractions owners, into ambassadors for that message? Because they're often at the place where the person checks out. So I'm checking out, I gotta go back to Boston. I keep using Boston, but it could be anywhere, New York or whatever. And if have we ever thought about giving them tools? Not a huge hour-long conversation, but could they qualify that person with one or two well-researched questions card. Well, if you loved us so much, think about this on your trip home. Bye-bye, see you next year. Instead of just, bye-bye, see you next year. So I don't know what that is yet, but that was something that came up at the Valley conversation.
All the rest areas that have specific places, they have education, but I don't remember seeing work.
So could we get, like the Department of Labor does a lot of advertising about work here, live here. Could we get the Department of Labor to put their information concepts in the rest areas? Love that idea. Great. Yes.
So I work at Stafford Technical Center, so I work with young people every day.
Yeah.
And what they say to me is they can't wait to leave because there's nothing here. And I say to them, what do you mean there's nothing here? People pay good money to come here. Like, this is a destination. People want to be here. They want to ski, they want to fish, they want to hike, they want to
All that stuff.
drink, whatever. I just say that to them because they're of that age.
When you get older, you can drink.
You should stay until you're old enough to taste those spirits from there in Addison County. And they say to me, but I can't afford to do those things. Now, I'm in Rutland. We're a very depressed economic area. These kids don't have anything. We're trying to raise money for Skills USA headquarters in Puerto Rico, and we can't ask our kids to do a penny drive because they don't have a penny to give. You know, these kids are really poor. They eat breakfast and lunch and an after-school meal in our school because they might not get one at home. And here we are saying to them, you should help support Puerto Rico because they've been wiped out by a storm. And they're like, I'm wiped out every day when I get up. So to tell them, oh, you should stay here and you could ski and you could fish and you can hike and you can drink spirits or whatever, isn't their reality.
They just want a good paying job.
They want a job and they don't see them here. So if you want them to stay, how do you get them to take advantage of all that Vermont has to offer? As a Vermonter, they're a part owner. They're a part owner of the skiing and the hiking and all of this. And yeah, like years ago, and I'm dating myself quite a bit, Pico used to have, Vermonters ski for free for half the day, once a month.
Yeah.
I moved to Vermont in 1986. I don't ski. You know why I don't ski? Because I worked in childcare and I couldn't afford a ski pass. I couldn't afford skis or a warm enough coat.
Yeah. It's an expensive sport. Right. So,
but if
how do we get those kids that you're talking about to stay here?
Because
what you're saying is it, just let me parse this out, is it that if we get them a free ski pass, they'll stay? Or is it we need to get them a good paying job back to what you said?
You give them those jobs that are on needs. You get them to build the affordable housing. That's what Stafford's doing. They're building an affordable house. There was a year we were the only new construction in the city was the house that students built. We're training kids to be childcare providers. We're training kids to be electricians and plumbers, which, I don't know how many of you like your toilets with flush, but count me in. And if you look at the number of plumbers who want to retire right now, we're all in a world of hurt.
Right.
So because eventually they are going to retire in the next 10 years.
So you're doing a good job doing that. What I'm hearing is we need more of that, or do you have a suggestion?
We
You've identified a
can't
problem.
overlook this young group of people all over the state who can't wait to leave. We need to educate them on why they want to stay. That the jobs are here. They don't think they are. That the opportunity is here because they don't think it is. And that there are things to do, and familiarity breeds contempt. So they're not impressed by a ski area. It's been there since they grew up.
Okay, I got it.
So, can I add to the solution for that? I see it on the wall right behind you that we have nothing on, is caring for the families and what they're going through.
Okay. But you're talking about
The
Vermont
family of the Vermont families,
Vermont
caring for
families.
Vermont families, so that these
We do
families
that.
and their kids.
But we do that.
You know what I mean? If
to a
they're
huge
eating-
amount in Vermont.
Yeah.
Do we not?
Well, I was just saying, if the children are not, if they're getting their 3 meals a day at school,
They're being
and
here.
they're, you know what I mean, that's where we can.
In some instances.
Okay, so
Meals should happen at home.
So
that builds the family.
Can I address her
So
issue?
more human services for people who are here to help them survive. You had a question and then yes.
Hopefully
Hopefully it's a solution.
So just building on that, there is lot of innovation going on in the state with startups and so forth. And then we have established companies that need to find the skills, and there's a gap. Why don't we do some really innovative, there's so much going on with design thinking and innovating, and why don't we go to where the problems are with the young people and get, the startups like Shacksbury and, Maple Landmark and get the companies, and why don't we innovate together with the young people and get them into
Transportation is a huge
because
for some
young
of these
people
kids. We're spread out and they don't have a car. We offer work co-ops and internships to students.
Just let her finish.
Yeah, no, and hackathons and, this kind of stuff is going on I just came back from a year in Ghana.
Yeah.
Where, kids are coming from villages with no running water, blah, blah, but yet, if you give them the space and the support and the infrastructure to innovate, they come up with the most amazing solutions to their own problems.
Yep.
And it's not just for elite kids who are paying a lot of money at incredible universities, in the trades, with housing, carpenters.
Good.
I don't know, I'm thinking also about scale too, with the peer-to-peer collaborative we used to have. How about, I don't know where that is.
What we're
today.
identifying now is needs for existing people who are here that we're already doing, and we need more of it. That's what I've been hearing here. I got it. You have
In the late '90s, I worked with GBIC in Burlington to develop a program called Learn to Earn.
Mm-hmm.
We recognized that there was a shortage of skills in the manufacturing industry. We polled all the manufacturers to determine specifically what type of skills they felt children should learn in school. Math and science were the two premier ones. So we put together a team and had people go into every high school in the Chittenden County area with a presentation that would show them what they could do with those skills, what the types of jobs were like in the industry, what they might be doing, some of the exciting things, and we motivated them to study more math and science so that they would come out of high school prepared to go into the workforce. And a lot of them did. We also had them come to the various companies and have some hand-on demos and actually see what it was like.
So GDIC is still working on that, still backing that work. I'm starting to see employers are innovating for themselves because they have this problem is front and center for them every day. Their product's not going out the door because they can't get enough workers. There's a company, GW Plastics in Bethel, Vermont, that is done they've done on-the-job training for years, but they've recently started working with a high school to get high school students in there, and they're working with Vermont Tech to get college students, and so they've got on-the-job training for existing people. They're reaching into the high school. It's really innovative and something that they're talking to other employers about. Employers will do it themselves because they're not getting the product that they need, and they need people. They need people. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to try to wrap
So
this up.
it's a solution, and it's very much like that, and the thing with GW Plastics is down in Bennington, they're doing the We Make Cool Stuff. And this is a great idea.
Yeah.
Because they do a career week, and you can do this with college students from New York and Massachusetts, and you can go out there and say, come to Vermont for a day on a bus, and come see that we make cool stuff. They go to the businesses, they watch them, they do robotics, they do woodworking, they do whatever it is, but they get them on a bus and they take them to these places, and these people, maybe high school kids or college kids or whatever, they really see it and they go, this is where I want to be for that one reason. And then we'll wrap this stuff around once they get here, but we need to get them excited about that piece, and I love that program they're doing.
And Vermont Tech has got this manufacturing lab that can now go all around the state. That's pretty cool. Similar, they're taking the lab to them. So I'm gonna try to conclude, and I'm gonna take one more question because you haven't said anything yet. So I'm gonna ask you if you have your hand
I
up.
just wanted to not miss one group, and I think it's, retirement to tourists. What's happening here, and we could use more of, is, I guess we would call it my first retirement. We have people who are living longer, people in their 50s and 60s using Vermont as a place to have their next career.
Yes.
Maybe it's part-time, maybe it's a complete change, but let's keep attracting those folks.
So I think think that's
We
what
called
the
them the
deferred
corporate
retirement-
refugees.
Yeah, well, that's the deferred retirement, a term that came up last week in the Valley, is corporate refugee. It's the person who's living in the city, has done the rat race, has made a lot of money, and still wants to work, still has desire to work, but maybe this stuff, the pink sheets over here, is more what their priority is than the almighty dollar. And again, going back to thinking about, we want everybody here, we want to fix all of our problems, totally get it. But what can we really do? We need to find the people, like it or not. We can try to fix the economy. Oh, gosh, I don't know how to do that yet. But we can try to fix the economy. And meanwhile, let's try to attract some people where finding the biggest corporate job that pays $400,000 a year is not their priority. Because that's not what we have here. We should continue to work to try to get that here, but at the same time, we need people to fill the jobs that aren't $400,000 a year so that we can make our businesses grow bigger so that they can have more jobs, so that we can have a stronger economy. So thank you very much for your time. We're going to stay a little bit more for those of you who want to ask some more questions and have some more conversations. We've got a lot of good ideas here, a lot around retention, and many of these slide into different areas. We started under this headline, just so you know, we started a category. There's this urban climate refugees here, but we also started needs that didn't fall into a target market. Instead, these are things that we need to address to make sure that we can make a good plan for everybody. So this is where your needs assessment, your housing, your pieces are. So we're going to try to make sense out of this. We will email you if you'd like. We'll certainly email Sue and Robin a summary of this. If you would like to get the email directly from us, you can leave your card or leave your name and email. And we will also direct you to the Futures Project website where you can see how it builds across the state and see what other people are saying. Okay, that was
So
great.
one of the things is that you mentioned the UVM Leaders, the Vermont Migrant Roots Project, which I found, and we can put it on ACEDC's website. We'll have a link to it on our website sometime today when I get back to the office and put it up there, so you can read about it there.
And if you're looking for data on these subjects, the Futures Project is a startup organization whose goal it is to grow the economy and have a robust economy by 2040. The website is vtfuturesproject.org. It's on your card there. There's a ton of data there. The notion for them is that it's data first, vision second. So they've done all the data, they've done all the vision, and now they're trying to figure out what do we need to do to get to the vision. And so they are looking at a series of recommendations to close that workforce gap, to build 5,000 homes, to increase the GDP, all those target things. And we're just trying to do our part to hand them some information. So thank you, Robin. Thank you, Sue. Really appreciate your input. What a lot of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.